Hi, readers. It's Lori. I'm glad to be back. I'm not feeling 100% yet, but I'm definitely feeling better. And I'm still taking some measures to rest and take good care of myself, as well as to try to figure out what's at the root of whatever it is that's happening. It's some, I guess, kind of virus, but there's also perhaps something going on with my ears. Who knows? I find that when I go to the doctor, I often just feel like I knew no more when I leave than when I arrived. So that's kind of frustrating, but I'm sure it'll all sort itself out. Either it'll go away or I will, just figure out what it is and treat it, right? Those are the options. So thank you for your messages and for your patience with me. It's always hard when you're a content creator to, discover that you can't create content for a few days and that you didn't have anything really edited ahead. I had a couple of things I just hadn't edited. So there's that too. But today I'm here to talk to you about my possible TBR for Nonfiction November. As you know, if you watched my recent videos, I really had set a goal for this year of reading more nonfiction, and I feel like I've fallen pretty short of that goal. And I also believe that Nonfiction November will be a good way for me to catch up. So I have a pretty robust plan, a stack of books that I can choose from. And this year, I'm really going as far as looking at the prompts that Olive created. And I'll tell you more about that in a minute and kind of aligning some of these reads with those prompts. So, Nonfiction November, if you don't know, is a readathon put on by Olive at A Book Olive. And I have followed her for a long time. Olive reads a lot of nonfiction. She also reviews a lot of books on different sites and different, organizations that request her to review. She's a great YouTube content creator. She's very thorough. I love the way she approaches the descriptions of the books she's reading, and it really makes me want to read them too. For that reason, there may be a few of these that I divert from, but I'm also discovering that I want to read more of my backlist. So trying to hold tight to that goal as well. So let's start. So for this year, the prompts, the 4 prompts that you could follow if you choose are fraud, web, capital, and display. You can make them fit in whatever way that works for you. And I've taken a little bit of a liberty here. So we'll see. But I'm really, you're going to not be surprised by a couple of these, and then you are going to be maybe surprised by a couple of others. We'll see. But here we go. Okay, so let's start with fraud. And for fraud, I actually feel bad a little bit about this, but I picked the Matthew Perry autobiography, Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing. And I guess the reason I'm using this for fraud is because we now know that Matthew Perry was struggling with addiction. And in his mind, he was sort of being fraudulent by covering that up and by coming to work sometimes impaired by some medications that he was taking without a prescription, and just in general not representing himself honestly in the sense of what was going on. And he actually almost died. So I have heard mixed reviews about this one, but my partner wanted it. So this was an auto buy for her for sure. And she read it, and I think she liked it. I think what we both are discovering now, because she's already read it, is that when we watch Friends reruns, which we do a lot, we've always been avid Friends fans. If you're not familiar with the Friends series, I can't imagine, but just look it up. It's really kind of fantastic. Now and again, we'll be watching one and she'll say that was when he, came out of rehab, or that was when he was in rehab and, was having to go into rehab at night after he finished shooting the show. So yeah, I'm sure it was a very difficult time, and I'm constantly sort of rooting for him to stay clean and sober, because I can't imagine how difficult that is after what he was going through. Drug addiction is not a choice. It is a disease, and the compassion that we as readers need to bring forward is important. And for him to have the bravery to come forward and tell the story is quite amazing, I think. So that is for my prompt fraud. This one won't surprise you, but I do want to get to this in the month of November because it is my last quarter nonfiction read that you chose for me as viewers. And this one will follow the prompt web for me. This is sort of a web of consciousness in my mind. So The Soul of an Octopus, A Surprising Exploration into the Wonder of Consciousness by Cy Montgomery is one that I have wanted to get to for a while. This one won the national, well, it was a finalist for the National Book Award, and Cy Montgomery has also been sort of lauded for a couple of others that she's written. And there's a new one that if I can get my hands on it, I might also read in November. But for now, I'm going to commit to this one. It's pretty short. I think it'll be a pretty easy read based on the information I've gotten from other people who have read it and loved it. And I am just fascinated with what I'm going to learn about an octopus and octopuses, which is the true plural. All of us who grew up in the 60s and were told it was octopi were misled. I really think that this will be a good one for me. And I've heard that it's revealing and comforting and very satisfying. All right, for the prompt capital, this one is coming from my library. I have talked about this book before and I have gifted it to my son, and I don't know that he's read it, but this is The Soul of America by John Meacham. I think it's available for me to pick up, but I do need to go over there when I'm feeling better and get it. So there's been that challenge this week, but I'm not going to start it till November anyway. John Meacham is a Pulitzer Prize winning nonfiction writer, and he does write a lot about American history and people, iconic people in the history of America. In this case, he looks back at times in our history that were particularly critical for supporting some new, renewed hope when there was a lot of division and fear, which, of course, we currently have now. I can't say that this is the most difficult time in the history of America. I mean, there's been a lot of difficult times, but this is a pretty incredibly hard time in the ways in which we are divided and the ways in which we are unable to overcome this commitment to one stick in the ground or line in the sand versus the overall well-being of or the overall good of the people. And it really does become, for me, a question not of what party you're affiliated with and what party you belong to, but what values, beliefs, and really what hope and commitment you have to the future of all Americans. And that, for me, is what I want to kind of discover, is how people overcame some of these challenging things. And he follows a number of people and a number of situations in history in this book. And what he sort of focuses on is a phrase, which is why it's called this, that Abraham Lincoln used, which was to call the better angels of our nature forward so that we could make decisions that were in the best interest of peace in America. And obviously, he's just written a book about Lincoln, which I would also like to get to. But this one is a priority because, again, backlist, and because I could access it really easily from my library. So that one's on its way to me. Display. This one is also, I have a couple of possibilities for display, I would say. So I'd like to finish this, which I started a little bit in October, but didn't get very far in. And I really would like to read more of this. And I'm not quite ready to put the horror away yet. So this would be a nice little taste of that. And in my mind, this is a book that displays a number of female authors, women who pioneered horror and speculative fiction, which in my mind is something that both fascinates and delights me. So I would appreciate if I got at least a little bit farther in this book rather than where I'm at now. And again, I think I've showed you, but this has some great illustrations in it. It's just so well done. This green all throughout is just really spectacular, and it just pops everything. So it talks about authors, women authors that I've really known about for most of my life, but also some that I wasn't familiar with. Lisa Tuttle is one. She was born in 1952. I have no idea who Lisa Tuttle is. So that will be fun for me. So that will give me a feel for a number of other authors that have paved the way and are continuing to pave the way. Another display possibility is Another Day in the Death of America by Gary Jung. This was gifted to me by one of my subscribers, and it's been a while since she sent it to me. I think Tammy sent it to me. If that's not true, I feel terrible, but I'm pretty sure it was Tammy. This one has an interesting premise to it. It's a chronicle of the lives of 10 different people in America who were affected by and impacted by decisions and experiences that changed their lives, and not necessarily in a good way. This one really discusses the violence that is occurring in America and how this is impacting not only these individuals, but the really sort of the soul of America. So it kind of correlates with the John Meacham book to some degree. This one is, I'm sure, very difficult to read. I looked at it a little bit before I chose it to see, because sometimes for me, nonfiction can get pretty detailed and really get into the weeds of discussions rather than stories. And this one is definitely, from what I'm seeing, a story. I remember, and there's stories about each person, so it probably reads a little bit more like fiction, although it's definitely not fiction. I remember Tammy saying it was a really hard read. So I am also thinking about that, but I would like to finish this because, again, she sent this to me before I stopped filming on BookTube years ago. So I've had it for a while. If there's time, I would like to pop this one in too. It might be sort of a restoration from some of these more heavy topics. I don't know that this one follows any sort of prompt particularly, although it might follow display too, because she's sort of putting her life on display to some degree. But I adore Ann Patchett. I can listen to this one too. I have access to it on audio, I think on Scribd. It really just is about some experiences in her life that were struggles at the time, but now she can look back and say that, those were days that were really meaningful to her and that really created within her a strength maybe that she didn't know she had. What I love about this is there's a quote on the intro flap about an unlikely friendship that she's formed with Tom Hanks' assistant. She explores what it means to find someone, this is the quote part, to find someone who could see us as our best and most complete selves. Isn't that what we all want, really, is to be seen as our best and most complete selves? And now that I think about it, that's kind of a theme running through all of these choices, right? From understanding that Matthew Perry is a great guy and a complete person, even though he has experienced this intense disease and disorganization as a result of that. The soul of the octopus, obviously, we're looking at both the complete self of the octopus, but also of its impact on us. We're looking at this in the sense of our government and of the people, for the people, by the people concept of our government. And what would it be like if we were completely whole and able to be seen, heard, and valued for our complete selves, and maybe a little bit even with the horror authors and folks that were impacted in this book as well. So I feel like that's kind of a running common theme, unintended, but that was a revelation after really talking to you about this and sharing that quote. So thanks again for joining me today and for being patient with me. It's always going to happen that there are things that come up that create an impact on, whether or not content creators can get content out. Certainly this is not my job, and I haven't worked all week. Today is the first day that I'm going to actually show up and coach my clients. I've just taken these days and really not done much because I've really felt pretty awful. So I appreciate your patience and also hope that you're not experiencing something like this. I know this is sort of the season where germs are flying and cold weather comes in, although not for us yet. But I hope all of you are continuing to be well. If you're participating in Nonfiction November, let me know what's on your list, because I might be coerced into reading something different as a result of your TBR. And as always, happy reading. Bye.